Hello, how's it going? If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Jake Babcock, and I run an AI deal generation agency called Aditi, and we work with B2B service companies to provide them AI cold email services to help them generate more deals and to help them scale their businesses without having to increase headcount. Like I said, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the importance of intent targeting for AI cold email specifically. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into this. The biggest question is like, what's intent targeting? First I'll preface this by starting off with the fact that the majority of cold email providers out there aren't doing this, and it's probably the biggest determination as for why a cold email campaign is going to either succeed or fail. Um, and so ultimately, what it is. Intent targeting is basically building lead lists based on intent signals rather than just scraping leads based on persona definitions. So, an example of what that could look like, scraping leads based on persona definition would be scraping CFOs at financial services companies because you know that that's the type of person that likely experiences the problem that your product solves. Intent signaling works a little bit different. Intent-based targeting works by identifying signals that signal that people are experiencing the pain that your problem solves, and then building your lead list from the companies that correspond to those pain signals that you're able to find. So intent targeting means reaching out to prospects who are showing active, very verifiable signs that they need your services right now. So this isn't just companies that fit your ICP definition. It's companies that are actively experiencing the problem that you solve, and they're showing it. There's evidence that they are experiencing it. The majority of cold email lists, like I said, are built based on firmographics. So this is industry, company size, geography, revenue, company headcount, and so on. Intent targeting, like I said, adds another timing layer. So instead of contacting everybody who could theoretically need you, you're only going to be contacting the subset that are actively showing signs that they definitely are in the buying window for your product currently. So this matters for two main reasons. The first reason this matters is for deliverability. So the reason a lot of cold emails fail isn't actually just because of issues with spin tax or issues with copy or issues with the offer. The majority of the reason actually comes from the fact that their email is just landing in the inbox of somebody where it's not relevant to them. So, email infrastructure lives or dies based on recipient engagement. So, irrelevant emails are going to get ignored, they'll get deleted, or they'll get marked as spam. So, enough of those signals are what are going to end up ruining your sending reputation and what are eventually going to cause all of your emails to go to spam. So, you may be running, a cold email campaign for your business that's sending 1,000 emails per day. Copy could be perfect. Targeting might now be perfect, but maybe there was a period when it wasn't. And the amount of spam rankings you would have gotten from that time period are now causing all of your emails to go to spam. So it's a bit of a silent killer and, you know, can cause you to go with a dead pipeline for a long period of time if you're not careful. So intent targeting keeps your list relevant enough so that people actually open and engage. The reality is every single lead in your list is somebody that is showing an intent signal. So there isn't going to be anybody on your lead list that receives your email and thinks, this doesn't matter to me. The other reason is conversion. So any prospect actively experiencing the problem that you solved, when you reach out to them with a solution to that problem, they're much more likely to engage with your email that you send them. So this could make the difference between, a reply rate on a campaign being around 0.1% to all the way up around 1%, something which, on a campaign size of 1,000 leads, that's pretty meaningful. So you can think of the amount of pipeline that might get generated from that. And if you have reasonable sales conversions and your closing team is good, then, that's, you can do the math on how much business that might be for your team. So in my past video, I made a video about how to integrate Sourcewell into a workflow for cold email for recruiting companies. So tying back to that, recruiting is a great benchmark for this, specifically because recruiting has the cleanest intent signal that there is in outbound sales. It's open job postings. There's really nothing to deny it. If a company posts for a job that they're looking to hire, financial services company goes ahead and posts a job for a staff accountant. It's clear that they need a staff accountant. If you're a company that does recruiting services for financial services, That's a pretty clear intent signal that they're a good prospect to reach out to at that time. So a job post is public, unambiguous declaration that the company needs to hire. So it's very clear cut, very obvious that they're going to need a recruiting firm services. So it's, a perfect signal to reach out or for a recruiting company to reach out to a company like this in that kind of time frame with no guesswork really being required. So this is why job posting scraping really becomes the backbone of AI cold email for people providing it for recruiting and staffing firms. Clay's infrastructure allows you to pull job postings daily within a certain time frame, and then you can pull all these jobs, have the companies for each job, and then find the decision makers at each job with a simple search done inside of Clay as well. If you match the jobs with the job postings and match them with the decision makers at those companies, you've got an intent-based lead list built ready to go very simply. So every email that goes out has a verifiable reason to exist, and that's the benchmark. So for any other industry, the question here is, how can we replicate this signal across different industries? So what we're going to cover today is specifically intent signals and intent targeting, specifically for logistics and freight companies. So logistics companies sell capacity and supply chain services to shippers. So basically, they sell these services to companies that need to move physical goods. So where in recruiting you have job boards where it's very easy to see what companies are looking for jobs. You do not have an equivalent for companies looking to move goods or, a form of a shipping board or whatever you'd like to call it. So the reality here, though, is there are strong proxy signals, and if you use them together, you can get close to the same level of precision. And there's very few people out there actually doing this, so it can be very competitive if you're able to employ these strategies effectively. So the first example here, again, ties directly into it, but even job postings for logistics and supply chain openings. So this really does serve as an equivalent, and it uses the same infrastructure that Clay has that people are using for recruiting and staffing firms every day, with just a couple of slight differences. So when a company's hiring for, any of these roles, it's really evidence that they're scaling their shipping needs. If companies are showing that they need to hire for a supply chain manager, it's because they're growing out their supply chain processes, likely scaling out their supply chain in general. They're scaling out their shipping needs. So some examples here would be job openings for logistics coordinators, transportation managers, supply chain managers, shipping supervisors, distribution managers, or carrier relations manager, to name a few. There's obviously a couple other examples, I'm sure, but the reality here, if you're a business owner of a logistics and shipping company, companies that sell physical goods, for instance, that are hiring for roles like this, they don't hire into these kinds of roles when their freight is flat or when they're not looking to move goods at a higher rate. Anytime they do this, it means that they're looking to increase their shipping volume. So a logistics hire is a leading indicator of volume growth, which is exactly the buying condition that a freight carrier wants to target, that a logistics company or a business development executive at a shipping and logistics company is going to want to target these kinds of signals. So this would be the exact same workflow as there would be for recruiting inside of Clay. And I'll also mention in my next video that I show, I'll be going through a workflow of how exactly you can employ this. So this would be the same workflow that you would have in Clay. You get job postings, you enrich the job postings in Clay with the decision makers at the corresponding companies for the job openings, and that's then your lead list. The only difference here is instead of, finding the hiring manager or maybe the human resources executive, instead you're going to be finding the people that are managing and overseeing the entirety of their supply chain processes. So that's basically the workflow. Another signal that we have is new facility announcements. So anytime a company moving physical goods is going to announce a new warehouse, a distribution center, manufacturing plant, or any kind of regional expansion, this creates immediate and urgent need for freight services, even before the facility goes live. So the reality is carriers need to get set up, lanes have to get established, but more importantly, the relationships have to get set in place as well. So these relationships take some time to obviously build, and the window between the announcement and operational need for these kinds of services is usually anywhere between 2 weeks to a couple of months. So these kinds of signals, specifically for facility announcements, they can be monitored in a few ways. One of the ways that these can be monitored is through news alert channels such as Feedly or Google Alerts. So another video to come soon on the Feedly and the Feedly API for signal targeting as well. Another one is going to be LinkedIn company announcements. So announcements that are made on a company page on LinkedIn. Local and regional business press, of course, a little bit less useful in terms of intent targeting if it's not going to be on the internet, but let's assume in this case they are. Also have PRN, Newswire, or Business Wire. So the reality here is that speed is what matters the most. Any kind of logistics or freight provider who can reach out to one of these companies immediately at announcement is solving an urgent problem that they only really just came across. So if you wait any longer than that and wait until maybe 6 months down the road, the reality is you're going to be competing for incumbent business by that time. So another example here is for funding rounds. So any kind of product-based company raises money, increases their capital through maybe a Series A or a Series B. That capital is typically getting put towards scaling production, inventory, distribution, or of course, hiring. More goods being moved is going to always mean more freight volume. So some of the best ways to target these could be companies having recently raised Series A or Series B in manufacturing, any kind of consumer good companies, e-commerce, industrial equipment, as well as any kind of distribution company. In terms of data sources, so the key ones that you're going to want to look at here are going to be Crunchbase. Crunchbase is great because it's got a native Clay integration, but even for ones that don't have native integrations, there's always ways around this. LinkedIn funding announcements is another one. And then, of course, you have TechCrunch and Sector Press. So any of these companies that get funded are in active growth mode. So they're building out their operations. Another thing to keep in mind here is for companies, any of these kind of product-based companies that are raising a Series A typically are more junior in their growth period. So they're less likely to have long-lasting relationships with carriers already established. So in this case, these people are going to be, or these companies are going to be much more open to new vendor conversations in a way that mature. The mature and stable and very well-established companies that have been around for a long time probably won't be. So it's another thing to keep in mind when it comes to targeting based on funding rounds. So another signal we have is physical product growth, specifically for e-commerce or physical product companies. So for freight companies that are targeting these kinds of companies looking to ship, so some examples here would be any kind of new product launch. Obviously, you're going to see this, on either a press release, LinkedIn, company website. Also, Amazon ASIN expansion or new product listings on Amazon. You also have new national distribution announcements. So this could be a company that maybe right now is shipping only through California, and then they announce to ship all throughout the nation, all throughout the United States. Then maybe they decide to go globally and they're now shipping internationally. So each one of those stages is going to signal the need for increased shipping, increased shipping capacity. So another one is going to obviously be new retailer listings. This could be a brand being picked up by a major retailer. So now knowing that it's going to be sold at more retail locations, there's obviously going to be a large need and demand for increased freight to replenish the product when it goes out of stock. So lastly, we have some industry specific triggers. So these are going to depend on freight specifically, but so a couple of these here. First one is going to be construction and infrastructure. So for construction and infrastructure, a couple of the main key ones you could look at are going to be building permits, maybe large project awards. So this could be any kind of announcement for maybe this kind of construction company wins the contract for a hydroelectricity construction project. That would be a huge indicator of the need for increased freight. Infrastructure contracts as well, and then obviously flatbed, step deck, and heavy haul demands coming from that. So for energy and industrial, this could be maybe in oil and gas. You might have drilling permits, energy project announcements, very similar to like I said for large project awards. These are in a large case, any of these new project announcements are going to signal the need for equipment procurement. So Anytime any of these projects start to scale out, the need for equipment, obviously there's going to be a huge need for logistics coming in there as well. So lastly, we have retail and consumer-based goods. So one of these is just very clear timing, coming up at around the Q3, Q4 pre-holiday build. They're going to be looking to scale their inventory like crazy at around this time. So that's going to be a huge need, a huge peak in need for logistics services. So ultimately, how do all these signals work together? So the power isn't in just manually tracking any one of these kinds of signals. The companies that are really going to win and that are going to drive the most pipeline out of monitoring these signals are going to be the ones that are able to actually employ it in an autonomous fashion in a workflow that runs continuously and monitors all channels of potential signals and immediately triggers outreach to the primary contact at that company when a signal is detected. So a fully built intent signal system, a cold email system based on intent signaling for a freight company. This would really look like something that maybe takes daily job postings across LinkedIn and Indeed. So specifically in logistics and supply chain. Then you'd have a workflow inside of Clay that's just going to identify the contact at the company that's doing the hiring for the specific operations or supply chain decision maker, and then enriches and verifies their contact data, so their email, of course. Then, of course, an AI personalization layer. The AI personalization layer does not need to be overkilled. Really, all that's needed here is just, hey, I noticed you're posting for X position. That's all it is. You're reaching out, just signaling the intent signal that indicates that they need what you're offering. You don't need to do a big icebreaker, like, first line icebreaker that's going to completely sound like it's generated by AI anyways. So a lot of the times, these overextensive personalization elements do more harm than good, is my point. So another one is then having a parallel news monitor. So you, of course, have the job postings going on for companies that are going to be looking to hire people in supply chain and logistics. But you also have a parallel news monitor running at the same time. So this could be in Feedly or Google Alerts, for instance. Feedly is something that we're going to cover in a later video, but you can integrate into Feedly by API and scrape information based on certain news signals. So something like that would be like a perfect example of a parallel signal indicator to have for running a campaign like this. So these will flag facility announcements and funding rounds, for instance, for certain companies. And then an automated email sequence that'll get deployed and personalized for outreach the same day that the signal is detected. So it would work as simple as signal is detected for shipping increase. Maybe it's new facility announcement for X company. X company goes into Clay. Company gets research to find the right decision maker in their contact. Email information all gets verified, gets personalized based on the signal that was retrieved, and then the campaign goes out. That's it pretty much from end to end. With, of course, obviously the verification, email verification, of course. So what's going to end up happening then is every email that goes out is going to have a specific and verifiable reason for having been sent. So the recipient is going to feel the relevance to them immediately upon receiving it. So ultimately, the core principle here, intent targeting doesn't change the offer, it doesn't change the message. All it changes is who receives the email and at what time. So the single variable is the timing of when they're going to get reached out to relative to the need that they're actually experiencing themselves. So, and this is ultimately, like I said, what it just explains the majority of success variations in cold email campaigns. The campaign, you might see a campaign that has 100 leads in it, but it's intent based and intent driven. That might have triple the success that a campaign that has 2,000 leads, where all the persona and firmographics of every single lead is to the T, but there's no signal or intent based layering on top of it. So for logistics companies, the job post signal is an anchor. It's the most scalable, most automatable, and the most directly correlated with buying intent. But layering in on top of it facility announcements and funding layers, funding signals, and catching high value accounts is going to also help to add a higher level of precision in terms of generating your campaign and getting more pipeline in the door for your business. So anyways, guys, hope you liked this video. If you found this valuable, please go ahead and like it, subscribe. Like I said, I'll have lots more videos coming out explaining how to actually integrate some of these intent-based tools and sources into automated workflows for cold email in the coming weeks. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy.